So here what I'm going to do is that I'm going to store the order ID in the session, or we can pass it, but I think in the session would be better. I'm going to say session and then order underscore ID is equal to order ID. And then in the payment here, what we need to do is that in case the user came from the order details, we can say PHP and then order ID would be equal to post order ID. And if user came from the cart, what we need to do is that we need to do the same thing, but this time the order ID is going to be equal to session order ID. Session order ID. And here don't forget the semicolon. That's it. Now we need to pass the order ID, so we have here pass the order ID, and that's it. Now we need to head on over to the complete payment. So I'm going to create now a complete payment .php here in this file, new file, complete underscore payment .php. And in the complete payment.php, what we need to do is that we need to do two things. We need to change the order. We need here, let me add a comment, change order status to paid. And the second thing is to store payment info in database. That's it. Very, very, very simple. And then just go to user account. Very simple. So in order to do all of these, first here in the payment we have the transaction ID, and here transaction ID and the order ID. So I'm gonna again go to by the way, we need the user ID, but the user ID is stored in the session, so we don't have to worry about it. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go to the complete payment, and then I'm going to say if is set get and then transaction ID and is set order ID get order ID order ID. Then we need here to complete and do everything. So here let me add the comments inside this if statement here, and then here, and then here. Let me remove these and also remove it from here. So the first thing that we need to do is that we need to change the order status. So to change the order status, we need to access the orders table. So I'm going to copy a code from the place order because we already have the code. First, we need to connect to the database and start a session. So I'm going to copy these two, and then I'm going to paste it at the top here. We need to say session start and include connection. And then we need to update. So to update, I think we have a code that updates in the account. Remember, in the account we have a code that we already used here, this update. So I'm going to copy this code. I'm going to copy these two lines, and then I'm going to paste them here. And then we need here to say connection. Let me push this because these must be inside. Let me push these. So here I'm going to say connection prepare update orders, and then set order status, and then question mark where order ID. So we need to say bind param order status S and I for order ID, and then we need to say here order status and order ID. And here order ID is equal to the order ID get order ID. And the order status, order underscore status is going to be equal to paid. At this point, it has been paid. And the transaction, we also need to say transaction ID is equal to get transaction ID. And here we update this, and then we need to say execute here, stmt execute. So this is the first step. The second step is that we need to store the payment info. So to store in the payment info, we need to say stmt and then stmt1 now, another statement, and then we need to say con and then prepare and then insert. But instead of creating this code from scratch, let me get a code from here. So here we have this insert. So let me get, I think this is shorter, so I'm going to get this one. I'm going to get this one, and then I'm going to paste it here in the complete payment. And then here I'm going to say statement 1. So stmt1 is equal to connection prepare insert into payments. And then what we want to insert is that we want to insert the order ID, order underscore ID, and we need to insert the order status, the user ID, and the transaction ID. The order status is not important here. The order status is not important, but the user ID is very important. The order ID is also very important. The transaction ID is also important. We don't need this. We don't need any of these. And we don't need the order status because payments, it means that obviously we aren't storing something that hasn't been paid. We are storing only payments. So I'm going to say here 3 question marks. We need the order ID, the user ID, and the transaction ID. And then here we need to say statement 1 and then bind param. We need to bind the I. And we need to bind order ID and user ID, which doesn't exist. Let me create it. And transaction ID. And we need to remove all of these things. So we need to get the user ID. Where's the user ID? The user ID is in the session. So I'm going to say user ID is equal to session. User ID. and then we say here statement one, not just statement, and then execute. Finally, we go to user account. So I'm gonna say header, and then location, and then account .php, and then you can pass even a parameter. Say remember, in the account, let me go to the account. In the account, we have in the bottom here, we have I think at the top, not in the bottom, we have username, user email, message. I think message. Let's say here message, payment successful is equal to, or payment message. I'm going to say payment message is equal to uh, paid successfully. Thanks for your payment. Thanks for your shopping with us. And that's it. Now we need to create the payments table in order to be able to continue. And else we need to exit this page and take the user to header, and then location index.php, and then exit.